I'll give you mine. After a night of heavy drinking at the club social, my junior, who'd missed the last train, made this suggestion to me. To be honest, the proposal was tempting. I wanted it so bad I could taste it. She dangled it right in front of me. It would be impossible not to get excited. I lost all sense of reason to her offer. My name's John. I'm a junior in college, just your average guy, or at least that's what I pretend to be. Ever since I was young, I've been a huge fan of video games and comics, what you'd call a geek, especially hooked on this one particular game. I'm so into it that I even have its action figures on display. It's a famous RPG series abroad, and I've played all the way up to its 14th title. I particularly love the 7th title, to the point where I have every character's figure displayed on my shelves. But out of all, there's this one heroine, a graceful lady skilled in martial arts, who might as well be my first love. I'm head over heels for her. But my obsession means I've bought not only her figures but keychains, posters, and even a body pillow. To outsiders, I'm probably just another creepy geek. I'm definitely one. I know that. That's why I tried to blend in at college, making some friends, engaging in some social activities. I'm worried that I'll be suspected of being a geek if I don't join a circle and go home immediately. By the way, the main reason I'm so cautious about revealing my geeky side is because of a past experience where I was dumped and ostracized after being outed as a geek. John, you're such a geeky gamer. Get real. Those words from my ex-girlfriend still haunt me. Why does everyone think geeks can't face reality? I believe it's wonderful to appreciate and support what or who you love, even while acknowledging reality. But society can be tough on geeks, so I pretend to be just another college student. The club I joined is a fashion and craft club. It's mainly focused on creating clothes and accessories. It might sound girly, but surprisingly, there are a lot of guys. I joined because I wanted to make clothes for my favorite plush toys. Most members prefer to work quietly, which suits me. That's what I thought. Then, my peaceful routine was disrupted by a new member. I first noticed that junior when I was in my junior year. A new girl joined our club. Her name was Madison. Madison was as cute as her name suggests, with a ponytail that suited her so well. And she had quite the figure. You know the term bombshell? Well, that was her. She had a large bust, a toned stomach, and a big behind. She resembled the character I adore in terms of physique, although their hairstyles were different. If that character existed in real life, she would have probably looked like Madison. That's why I was sort of interested in her, but unfortunately, her personality was very different. While my favorite character is somewhat feisty, Madison is many times more so. She might be what some call she's hot and cold, but to me, she only has the cold part and none of the hot. You're making clothes for stuffed animals again, huh? Why don't you add more frills or something? I don't need frills. It doesn't suit this type of stuffed animal. It's not about what suits or doesn't, isn't it just because you're bad at adding frills? She always teases me like this. I could tolerate just that, but she seems to be a pretty active woman, always planning various events, like socials or outings. I've declined all of them, but surprisingly, many people attended. Because of her initiatives, she's become the center of attention in our club. It's surprising how well she gets along with people, even though she has this kind of vibe. But observing closely, Madison seems to get along pretty well with other guys. She'd laugh, compliment, and even crack jokes with them. But not with me. With me, it feels more like she's mocking or pointing out my mistakes. The way she acts around me is so different from others that I can't help but feel she dislikes me. If she didn't like me, I'd prefer she keep her distance, but she keeps getting involved. I especially tried to avoid their socials because I knew it would be even worse. You'll come to the next gathering, right? No, I'm not going to. It's close to your place and I've even counted you in for the reservation. Please come. She forced me on the spot with that. I was taken aback by this. If the reserved number of people don't show up, the restaurant's food will go to waste. It's a hassle for the restaurant staff, and the attendees were expecting me to come, so backing out now seemed almost impossible. Sighing, I reluctantly decided to attend the gathering. As expected, when I went to the gathering, I just sat at a corner table sipping on my drink, watching everyone else having a blast. Right in the middle of the yapping was Madison, and she looked somewhat endearing when she was caught up in the fun. But she's the polar opposite of the kind of character I like. I can't help but wish, maybe if she was a bit more demure. I guess that's why my ex-girlfriend used to tell me I'm out of touch with reality. But daydreams are just daydreams. I don't let them affect my real life. Lost in such self-justifying thoughts, time flew by, and I mean really flew. I had missed the last train. But it wasn't just me who missed it. It was Madison too. Turns out, the train connections to her house weren't great. She checked the schedule, thinking she had enough time, only to find out that there were no more trains. Oh man, I forgot about the transfer because this wasn't my usual station. Madison, well, she might seem all put together, but she has her moments of absent-mindedness. Every now and then, she makes silly mistakes. I've seen her mix up thread colors on her sewing machine, but missing the last train, that really hurts. Around this station, there aren't many hotels, and taking a cab to where there's one would certainly hurt the wallet. Also, I used to live in an apartment far from the university because the rent was cheaper. Meaning, around my place, Madison didn't have any friends, no one to take her in for the night. Hey, you live nearby, right? Can I crash at your place? Sure enough, Madison came up with that request. No way. And I immediately shut her down. I really don't want her finding out I'm a geek. Beyond that, letting a woman into my room makes me think twice. Not that I have any ulterior motives, but it's Madison we're talking about. If she, popular not just in our club, but all over the campus, spreads the word that he's head over heels for a video game character, my college life would be over. With no other option, I, who wasn't that drunk yet, tried to find a hotel with vacancies, but they were all booked. Why does it always happen like this? I thought, weighing my options. Do I risk exposing my geeky side and let her stay, or do I leave her be? Actually, there wasn't a choice. Madison is beautiful. And I can't just leave her out here, intoxicated as she is. If I did, I'd lose something fundamental about being human. I just couldn't do that to her. I'll let you stay, but don't go snooping around my room too much. Do you have some adult magazines or something? No, I don't. Joking like that, we began walking. Luckily, my place is really nearby, so even a tipsy Madison could make it there. I guess I've got no choice but to bite the bullet now. Reluctantly, I let Madison into my room. Every nook and cranny of my room is filled with action figures, merchandise, posters, and some slightly nasty wall art. Honestly, I wouldn't want to let any girl see this mess. It's pretty awkward. I thought about tidying up beforehand, but there's just too much stuff to hide, so I had to give up on that idea. I was certain Madison would mock me, saying things like, "You've got so many girl action figures, it's kinda creepy," or "Oh wow, so making outfits for plush toys was your hobby, huh?" But to my surprise, oh, is that T from the Final Fantasia series. By the way, this series is a game title, and T is my favorite character from it. Wait, you know it. I don't just know it, I absolutely love it, especially Final Fantasia 7. Oh my, you have the main character's action figure too. I adore this character. Madison's eyes were shining like I'd never seen before. Those eyes, they were definitely the eyes of a geek. I knew because I'm one of them too. And she seemed to be quite the hardcore fan. I missed out on that figure in the draw. I'm so jealous you have it. I just got lucky. The odds were really against me. Wait, Madison, you're a geek too. I was taken aback by this surprising side of her. She blushed and hesitated a bit. Yeah, I am. But you know, nobody around me plays games, and I can't really talk geek stuff with non-gamers, so I kept it to myself. It's nice to find someone with the same interests. Where did that usual cheeky Madison go? Seeing her slightly embarrassed smile was quite the contrast. I'm not into hot-cold personality, but there's something about that gap in personality. As I was lost in thought, Madison began looking around my room. This poster of T is so cute, and you have so many cool merchandise, but there's one thing that's a bit disappointing. She was excitedly looking around my room when suddenly, her eyes fixed on me with a stern look. Did I do something? I thought, tilting my head. Madison then pointed at my figure shelf with a snap. The way you've arranged these figures is so messy. We can't see the T in the back. To be called out for my figure layout was unexpected, and I was left dumbfounded. Truth be told, I don't really have a knack for displaying figures. I just kind of placed them there. I didn't expect Madison to critique it. You should use a stand to elevate them like this. Oh, really? Yes. It's such a waste when you have all these cute figures and they are not displayed properly. Madison pouted as she said this, and her expression looked so much like T's that I couldn't help but laugh. Why are you laughing? It's just, you kind of looked like T just now. Really? Yay. I love T because she's so cute, so that's a huge compliment. Madison's genuine excitement was quite adorable. I often wished she was like this all the time. But apparently, when she gets as excited as she was today, she tends to speak fast or gets carried away with the conversation, so she usually tries to control her tone. Actually, I've always thought the clothes you make for the plushies would look cute on a T plushie. I was being careful not to sound too geeky, but it ended up sounding harsh. I'm sorry. It seems she was trying to be considerate in her own way, and it wasn't that she disliked me. Knowing this put me at ease, and I felt we could become good friends from now on. Just as I had this thought, I glanced at the clock and realized it was already late into the night. Staying up any later would make tomorrow tough. Maybe we should call it a night. Yeah. Oh wait, isn't today the announcement for the limited T figure draw? Madison's reminder brought it back to my mind. The results for the exclusive figure draw were due at midnight. It seems Madison had entered the draw as well, so we both checked our emails. And the result was, I didn't win. What a bummer. Frustrated, I slammed my fist on the floor. I really wanted that figure, but if you don't win the draw, you can't even buy it. I definitely don't want to buy it from a scalper, so I guess I have to wait for another chance. As these thoughts filled my head, Madison said, I actually won. Seeing my despair, Madison whispered, looking somewhat apologetic. Wait, what? I couldn't help but stare at the email she showed me. The email confirmed her win. Why did she win, and not me? It's not like I love T any less. A pathetic sense of jealousy welled up within me, and I didn't know where to look. Because if I look at Madison now, I might end up giving her a weird, envious stare. John. What? If you want, I can give you my winning ticket. Wait, what? I ended up repeating myself, but I eagerly asked Madison about her offer. Madison replied with a smile. You should be the one to get it since you're a bigger fan of T. Plus, consider it a thank you for letting me stay over. Are you serious? Thank you. Please let me have it. I felt as if an angel had descended upon me and was so grateful to Madison. Being a fan without many like-minded friends, I rarely get such help. In my overwhelming emotion, I even got on my knees to thank her right then and there. I was so thrilled about getting the T figure that I couldn't contain my excitement. Seeing me like that, Madison laughed and said, "But there's a catch. A catch. Come with me to the next Final Fantasia event." Even though she said it was a thank you, Madison was inviting me to a big event that was about to take place. Apparently, she was too shy to go alone, but really wanted to attend and was looking for someone to accompany her. "I know you well enough, and I think we'd have a great time chatting." Smiling, Madison made me an offer I couldn't refuse, all for the sake of the figure. Over the next few months, my relationship with Madison underwent a drastic change. To be honest, I was thrilled to have a fellow geek as a friend. Being passionate about something and sharing it with someone is just so much fun. Madison and I attended events together frequently. She'd even come over to my place to play video games. She'd help rearrange my figure displays, which I greatly appreciated. "I'll keep helping with your displays since you're so hopeless at it. I'm counting on you." By the way, I've been to her place too. Her figures and stuffed animals were neatly arranged, and it genuinely surprised me. She had a sense of style that I lacked, and it made me see a different side of her. By discovering new sides of each other, we began to respect each other even more as individuals. Before I knew it, Madison became my wife. We spent so much time together, going on dates while calling it fan activities. We probably went on more dates than most couples. Of course, we both understood each other's fan activities. Whether we were attending events together or one of us couldn't make it, we'd cheerfully send the other off. We each had our favorite characters, but we trusted each other as future partners. I'm glad we missed the last train that night. Today, while playing a game together, Madison mentioned that, "Indeed, if we hadn't missed that train, we might not be together like this." Life is unpredictable. You never know what might set things in motion. But whatever the reason, if I am happy with the life that has come to me, I want to cherish that happiness forever. People might laugh at our geeky hobbies, but in a way, they were the connection that brought Madison and me together. Without our shared interests, we wouldn't have become a couple, let alone husband and wife. That's what I now wear my hobbies with pride. Lost in these thoughts, Dacha, Dan, Madison unleashed her special move, and I lost the game. Honestly, I can never beat Madison, not in real life nor in games. While it's frustrating to lose, seeing Madison cheerfully exclaiming, "Yes, I won," makes it somewhat okay. My name is Eric Medifius. I'm a 26-year-old single company worker. Right after graduating from high school, I started working at a medical equipment manufacturer where I'm still employed today. At my workplace, we mainly handle products like diapers, gauze, and toothbrushes, primarily for hospitalized patients. It's beneficial for both the patients and their families if there's minimal hassle in preparing these necessary supplies during their hospital stay. It'd be convenient if they could get a set of everything needed for their entire stay. The reason I started working at this company goes like this. During my middle school days, it was just my mom and me, and we faced financial hardships. I wanted to become independent and start working as soon as possible. Then my high school teacher made this proposal to me. "Eric, your grades are top-notch. It's a waste if you don't go to college, but I know you want to work, so why don't you try for a recommendation to this company?" I was attending one of the top public high schools in the state. Even among students aiming for prestigious universities, I was always among the top performers. "Eric, only a few students from our school receive company recommendations each year. Given your outstanding performance, we, the school, want to fully support you. Why not attend their company briefing?" Among the few recommended companies, my teacher specifically suggested the medical equipment manufacturer. I didn't know much about what they did initially, but after hearing their presentation, I knew right away I wanted to work there. Our mission is to help patients have as comfortable a stay as possible in the hospital. We constantly source various products to cater to patients of all age groups. Every day, we visit hospitals to promote our products. We're looking for team members to help us make the world a better place. Seeing the passionate CEO talking in front of the job-hunting students, I was deeply moved by the company's mission and aspired to be such a fantastic adult. I thought how rewarding it would be to support patients and their families, even indirectly, by working here. After the briefing, I immediately asked my teacher for a recommendation, took the company's test, and got an offer. "Eric, we're so happy to have such a talented person like you join us. Let's work hard together." With those words, the CEO extended his hand with a smile. "Yes, I'll do my best." Shaking his hand, I was determined to be a responsible adult. Now, I still work as a salesman, feeling fulfilled every day, and before I knew it, I've been with the company for 8 years. But there was someone who would become a significant concern in my otherwise smooth-sailing corporate life. Recently, after a department transfer, Mr. Brown, my new boss, seems to have taken a dislike to me. He always accompanies his subordinates to check on their work, but for some reason, he always chooses me. "Eric, get the car ready now." "But aren't we scheduled to go on sales calls in an hour, sir?" I changed my mind. "Remember, you're my subordinate, and do as you're told." Without arguing, I quickly grabbed the company car keys. Mr. Brown regularly gave me such last-minute tasks. At first, I didn't understand why he was being so unreasonable, but I eventually learned the reason. He is a graduate from a top-tier university and apparently values educational background a lot. Because I joined the company right after high school, he doesn't seem to think highly of me. Before I was transferred, I heard from others that he would often complain, saying I hate working with high school graduates because they're useless. As for me, it felt incredibly unfair, but there's no way I could talk back to a superior. Even though I've been struggling in my current situation, I don't intend to quit my job, so I just have to endure it for now. Then, one day, just like usual, I went on an outside sales call with Mr. Brown. Our current branch is located in a rural area, similar to the Midwest, so it takes a significant amount of time to travel. Spending long hours in the car with him was a pain, but the beautiful countryside view from the window somewhat eases it. After we finished our scheduled sales visits, Mr. Brown said, "I'd like to stop by a convenience store," so I parked the car in the store's lot. I bought a drink and was about to return to the car when I noticed a woman in the nearby aisle. She was holding a white cane, probably visually impaired. She seemed to be in some kind of trouble. I approached her and asked, "Are you okay? I got caught in a ditch, and it broke my cane." Looking at her cane, indeed, the tip was snapped right off. The broken piece was nowhere in sight. It probably got caught in the drainage ditch and the other half got washed away. Walking alone in such a state is way too dangerous. "Where are you planning to go next?" "I was heading to the bus stop next door. I'm meeting my family there. They are coming to pick me up." The bus stop is only about a 3-minute drive from here. I've finished my rounds, and all I have to do is return to the office. I should offer this lady a ride to the bus stop. When I suggested this, she responded, "Are you sure?" and thanked me kindly. Just then, my boss returned from the convenience store. I told him about dropping her off at the bus stop. But to my surprise, he suddenly got irritated. "Are you kidding me? Why do I have to get involved in this?" "But Mr. Brown, the bus stop is on our way back. What's the big deal?" "It's not about that. I'm saying we shouldn't waste our time on something that doesn't benefit the company." Maybe she's just pretending to be blind. taking advantage of people's goodwill. How pathetic. I was at a loss for words at his claim. Indeed, the lady next to me looked deeply hurt and sad. At least let me call a taxi for her. Do whatever you want. Remember, you're on the clock. Trying to waste time with trivial tasks. People like you shouldn't be in this company. With that, Section Chief snatched the car keys from me in a huff and drove off aggressively. I'm so tired of him always being so emotional. Later, I tried contacting a taxi company. They said there'd be a considerable wait, and they seemed reluctant for such a short ride. Not wanting to upset her with any more back and forth, I composed myself and started with a smile. Seems like the cabs are all occupied. It'll take about 15 minutes to get to the bus stop. Mind if we walk there together? That's very kind of you, but I feel so bad. Earlier, that guy mentioned something about getting you fired from your job. Don't worry about that. He doesn't have that kind of power. And once we get to the bus stop, I can head straight back to work. If Mr. Brown exaggerates this situation to the higher-ups, there might be a chance I could lose my job. However, even if that is the case, I'd have no regrets. I helped this woman with all my heart, for the greater good. When I asked her if I could hold her hand, she said, sure. So, we walked hand in hand slowly towards the bus stop. Her hand was soft and pale, and just touching it made my heart race. By the way, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Sarah Miller. As you can see, I'm blind, but I've always loved the piano, and now I teach classes at home. The piano, that's wonderful. My name is Medithius. I work as a salesman at a medical equipment company. Medithius. Haha, yeah, it's a bit of an unusual last name, isn't it? It is. I do hear it sometimes around here. That's right. My mom's family is from this area, and after she divorced my dad, my last name changed to Medithius. I see. What's your first name? It's Eric. If Medithius is hard to pronounce, just call me however you like. Thank you. I was completely captivated by the beautiful and kind Sarah. Though we'd just met, there was a strangely familiar feeling about her. Our conversation was so enjoyable that before I knew it, we had reached the bus stop. Thank you so much. As a token of my gratitude, please use this for a cab. I'd like to pay for your fare. No, please, don't worry about it. Oh, here, just in case, here's my business card. Sarah tried to hand me a $100 bill, but I refused and gave her my card instead. A cab happened to stop nearby, so I said goodbye to Sarah and headed back to work. Surprisingly, Mr. Brown was out of his seat. According to other employees, he apparently went to another client, leaving me behind. Seems like he might have given up on me. As expected, he seemed pretty furious about the whole situation. Oh boy, what's next? As I was engrossed in my work, I suddenly heard a familiar voice calling me from behind. Eric, could you come here for a moment? The CEO, who's usually at the headquarters, was calling me over with a distressed look on his face. Am I about to be fired? When I entered the room, the CEO began. The head of General Hospital just called, and they've decided to cut all ties with Mr. Brown. What? From General Hospital? General Hospital is our biggest client. Not only is it large in scale, but it also has several affiliate hospitals. This means that they have the final say in which companies they associate with. Normally, we'd both have to rush over and apologize immediately, but unfortunately, he's out visiting another client. So Eric, I need you to come with me right now and apologize. Even though I was thinking, why me? I hurriedly headed to General Hospital. I had been there multiple times for business with Mr. Brown, but what could have possibly made the head decide to cut ties with him? If I had something to do with it, it'd be a disaster. Even the usually calm CEO seemed quite shaken up this time. After greeting the receptionist, I was led to the director's office, where the director was already seated, waiting. Overwhelmed by the director's presence, I was taken aback when I saw the woman sitting next to him. It was Sarah, the very same person I had just walked with to the bus stop. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. Please, have a seat." "Thank you, but I must apologize. Our employee caused you some inconvenience, and for that, I'm truly sorry." With that, the boss, CEO, deeply bowed to the director, so I bowed as well. "Please, both of you, lift your heads. I don't blame either of you. I've just decided not to do business with Mr. Brown anymore." Did Brown do something wrong? Actually, earlier today, my daughter met Mr. Brown and you, Eric, when she was out. Her cane broke, and you kindly escorted her to the bus stop. I truly appreciate it. I'm deeply sorry for the inconvenience back then. Thanks to Eric, I was really saved. Come to think of it, the director's last name was Miller, just like Sarah's. I hadn't imagined they were father and daughter. CEO seemed shocked by the turn of events. I feel like Eric has been really kind to her, and I'm truly grateful for that. "Oh, it's no big deal. I just did what was expected. If I could be of any help to Sarah, that's all that matters." "Yes, but unfortunately, my daughter mentioned that Mr. Brown made an insensitive comment towards her. Yes, he mocked me pretending to be disabled and said it was pathetic to rely on the kindness of others." Did Brown really say that? I'm truly sorry. Upon hearing about his behavior, the CEO was visibly angered, his face turning red. From the CEO's perspective, who has a strong sense of justice, Mr. Brown's actions were absolutely unacceptable. There's no need for the CEO to apologize. However, I do have one request. Please remove him from our business. We don't want someone with such a mindset towards people with disabilities to be involved with our hospital. Instead, please assign Eric to be our point of contact. I second that request. Eric is very considerate, and he'd be perfect for the sales role. My daughter feels the same way. CEO, please consider our request. I understand. I can't send someone I don't trust to represent our company to the hospital. The CEO looked at me, silently seeking my opinion. I promise to do my best. I'm looking forward to working together, I confidently declared. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect things to turn out this way. After that, things escalated rapidly. First, Mr. Brown got into big trouble over this incident and was suspended by the higher-ups. Given that his actions might have cost us a major deal, his suspension was justified. The CEO and other executives tried to contain the situation by making an unexpected personnel change, sidelining Mr. Brown to a less significant role. But in the end, it seemed too uncomfortable for Mr. Brown to stay at the company, and he decided to resign voluntarily. After leaving, he tried to find a new job, but it didn't work out well. Eventually, it seems his family grew tired of his antics. His wife and kids left him, and now he lives alone in loneliness. Looking back at his behavior, I personally think he got what he deserved. By the way, I became a sales representative for the General Hospital. While working hard, there was an unexpected turn in my relationship with Sarah. From our first meeting, I was deeply attracted to her. However, a shocking truth came to light. One day, I was invited to Sarah's home. Upon entering, I felt a strong sense of déjà vu. Wait a minute. For some reason, I felt I had been here before. As I was lost in this strange sensation, Sarah, with a smile, said, "Haha, seems like you finally remembered, Rick." Rick. Huh? Oh, a memory from my past suddenly flooded back to me. When I was 7, my parents got divorced, and my mom took me back to her parents' place in Nebraska temporarily. Back then, I often played with a childhood friend, a girl. Her name was nicknamed Sally, and she was such a sweet girl. My mom, fleeing from my dad, came back to her family home with me. I remember feeling the heartbreak as a child back then. But what filled that void was the fun times I spent with Sally. Her kindness, I wonder how much it helped me. I really liked Sally. Once again, I looked at Sarah's face. Sally, I'm sorry, I just realized it's you. It's okay. No wonder you didn't notice. I used to be able to see a bit back then, but my vision got worse over the years. It was only when I heard the name associated with Rick that I realized you're Rick. But no matter how much time passes or how much we change, our relationship hasn't changed a bit, right? Of course, I still like you, Sally. It was natural that, meeting her again after 19 years, I fell in love with her all over again. I love you too, Rick. I really do. Tears welled up in Sally's eyes as she spoke. Filled with happiness, I gently embraced her. And so, we began dating and now frequently go out on dates. Today, after a long time, I visited my grandparents' house with Sally. My grandparents were delighted that Sally had come to visit again. We used to play at my grandparents' house a lot when we were kids. Suddenly, I remembered something and asked Sally. Sally, do you remember burying that time capsule? Oh, yeah, I remember that. I'll try to dig it up and find it. But honestly, I didn't expect to find it easily since it was buried 19 years ago. However, at that moment, my grandmother, who was gardening, found something hard near the chrysanthemum. When I dug there, it was undoubtedly the time capsule we buried that day. I can't believe we actually found it. Look, this is what I was searching for. Saying that, I took out a beaded ring from the capsule. The ring, made in elementary school, was clumsy and too big for Sally's finger when she was 7. Even though it was a clunky ring, I desperately wanted it. I slid the ring onto Sally's finger and repeated the words I said 19 years ago. I love you more than anything in the world, Sally. Will you marry me? To my surprise, the ring fit perfectly on Sally's ring finger now. With tears in her eyes, a surprised Sally said, "Of course." That simple beaded ring from our elementary school days looked incredibly beautiful on Sally as she wiped away her tears. They say a lot can change in 10 years, but for us, it's been 12 years since we graduated middle school, now knocking on the door of our 30s. Taking this milestone, a reunion for our 8th grade class was organized. I'd received invitations every few years before, but this was my first time attending one. My name is Michael. After graduating middle school, I immediately started working and chose the path of a chef. Because of this, I lost touch with most of my classmates who went on to high school. Meeting classmates after more than a decade, it was only natural that everyone had grown up, and there were those whose faces or names I couldn't recall. Those whose faces were familiar but names escaped me, and those I recognized instantly. My middle school days weren't exactly filled with just good memories. Yet seeing everyone now, nostalgia permeated every moment. About 15 minutes past the scheduled start of the reunion, most attendees had arrived, and everyone, drink in hand, was engaged in conversation, waiting for the opening remarks from the organizer, who had been a class representative, Susan. I was alone, observing all of this from the side. Your kid's in elementary school now, so you finally bought a condo. I got an informal promotion to section chief. Thanks for being there at my dad's funeral. I couldn't say I got promoted to department head. He was so happy about being section chief. I could hear my classmates' conversations. Joy and sorrow, jealousy and envy. Is sharing those experiences what being former classmates is all about, I wonder? The only one not here yet is Mia. Shall we start? I heard the voice of Susan, who had been a motherly figure and class representative, and now the organizer of this reunion. I quickly turned on the speaker and handed the microphone to Susan. Then, I ran to close the open entrance door. Despite the restaurant staff being perfectly in place, I couldn't help but bustle around. Even the staff seemed apologetic. It wasn't about being tight-fisted, but my bad habit of doing everything myself was kicking in. It was when I bent over to close the entrance door. I saw, on the other side, the legs of a woman wearing crimson high heels. I involuntarily looked up and found a woman, clad in an expensive-looking dress and wearing model-like makeup, looking down at me. "Huh, are you, by any chance, Pua?" It was a remark let slip by Susan about the one participant who hadn't arrived yet that evening. It was Mia. Staring intently at my face, she said, "So, what are you doing there, still as broke as ever?" As I stood there flabbergasted, she snorted with laughter and went inside. The words Mia showered on me about being Pua were passed along like a game of telephone by the classmates who heard them nearby. During this, Mia proceeded further inside, her face tight. Then, out of nowhere, a man's voice rang out. "Don't be late, Pua person number 1." At that voice, Mia's feet stopped dead in their tracks. "What's this, Pua person number 1? It was the first time I'd heard it, but it seemed to be about Mia. Who was that? The organizer, Susan, immediately yelled into the microphone. The venue fell into a hushed silence. A faint rustling noise came from the speakers. Susan's hand was shaking, causing the microphone she was holding to rub against her collar. Susan was furious. So furious that her hands were shaking. Mia, her face even more tense, continued to move deeper into the venue step by step. Susan regained her composure and made a very socially courteous greeting. For hosting this reunion, we talked Michael into letting us reserve his restaurant that he owns. Susan gestured for the attendees to applaud, and a round of applause broke out. I responded with a slight nod. When I looked up, Mia was in my line of sight. She seemed to have never dreamed that I would own a restaurant and was staring at me with wide eyes in surprise. Since it was my own middle school reunion, I planned to just be one of the guests that day and not worry about work. But it's my restaurant. I found myself peeking into the kitchen, unable to settle down. In the midst of all this, I was summoned by the organizer, Susan. "Stop fussing over things, let's enjoy the reunion." As I hesitated over what to do, the restaurant staff pulled out a chair and urged me to sit. That's when I realized I had been unconsciously avoiding face-to-face conversations with my classmates and had been helping the staff. Well, no use in running away. I steeled myself and joined the table where Susan and the others were sitting. We toasted at Susan's lead. "I thought you might refuse, but thanks for letting us reserve the place." "No big deal, it's business after all." When I responded to Susan, a guy next to me patted my shoulder and said, "Exactly." Then, Susan shook her head vigorously. She said, "Think carefully about what we did to Michael in middle school. What my classmates did to me in middle school. At that time, my family was at the peak of poverty. Due to my dad becoming a guarantor, we fell into debt, and he overexerted himself to repay it, eventually breaking down and becoming unable to work. We moved to a smaller, cheaper apartment, and I transferred schools in the middle of the first term of 8th grade. I transferred to a coeducational class where Susan was the class representative. The new classmates labeled me as poor guy and made fun of me due to our poverty. But hey, we weren't serious, except maybe one person. "We all called you that affectionately," said the guy seated next to Susan. Susan bluntly said that's no excuse. "Right, Michael?" she asked me. I, being asked to agree with Susan, responded with a bitter smile. Susan, being the class rep, bowed her head, saying she should have done more to help everyone. "It's late for regrets, but please forgive us." She bowed deeply, and others followed. I get it, sure, being called Pua was hurtful at first. I was hurt, being ridiculed and made fun of. However, At one point, I decided it was fine. Even if poverty was all I had and no matter how much I was trampled on, I thought it was fine. One day just after the second term started, I was made to run errands after school. Someone said they were thirsty because it was hot on our way back through the park, so we decided to buy cold drinks. I didn't want to spend money, so I had no interest. Yet, I was made to go to the nearby vending machine and get drinks for everyone. All the classmates there each pulled out their own spare change and pushed it onto me. I left my bag and ran to the vending machine. Then, after buying drinks, I returned to the park where everyone was waiting. I had some change left over, enough for one more can of soda. That's when I was told there shouldn't be any extra money. Go buy the one that's missing. Reluctantly, I ran to buy the missing one. When I got back from the vending machine, everyone had disappeared from the park. All that was left was me and the ice-cold can of soda in my hand. There was a note in the bag I had left behind. The missing one is the poor person's share. I was more thirsty from running, so I drank it all in one breath. We, sitting around the table, were immersed in solemn reminiscences. Well, even if we reconcile with Michael, there's another person we need to apologize to. Susan glanced at Mia, who was at a distant table. Poor person number one, huh? But she was calling Michael poor earlier too. So, you were the one who said that to Mia. Susan made a fist-pumping gesture. The fact that we made Mia say such a thing, it's our fault at the root, isn't it? I had no idea, but until I transferred, Mia was apparently called the poor one. In 8th grade, her parents had failed in business. So that's what they meant by number one of the poor people. I had always thought that Mia was the one leading, mocking me. But according to Susan, to avoid being the target of mockery in the class, Mia apparently made me the scapegoat. So, she was both the perpetrator and the victim regarding being called poor. Susan felt responsible and had been in touch with Mia. Susan started to talk about Mia. After middle school, Mia worked at a call center while attending night high school, saving her tuition fee. She got a scholarship at a prestigious university and graduated with top grades. Now, she had a general position in a top-tier company. I stopped Susan, who was about to bring her to our table, to apologize. There's no need to make a big deal out of it. I'll talk to number one as the number two poor person later. I had sensed something from Mia's stiff expression when she appeared in this venue. When the feast was in full swing, Susan announced a seat change. That's when I moved to the table where Mia was sitting. I pulled out the chair next to her and asked if I might sit. She gently lifted her hips and nodded. I mean, earlier, it was nostalgic. The poor one. When I said this, she seemed even more apologetic. I'm sorry. You probably think I'm a horrible woman, don't you, addressing you like that? You remembered my name. She quietly nodded in response. I heard about it from Susan and the others. When I said this, I could tell she tensed up. I'm poor person number two, and you're poor person number one. As she was about to passionately object, I stopped her with a hand. Let's drop that topic. You've had your share of hardships since middle school, haven't you? She crinkled her nose, giving a shy laugh. The tense expression she had when she first appeared was completely gone. She was probably nervous and on guard about meeting old classmates who knew her when she was poor. That's why she was probably showing off. But now, looking at her up close, her face seemed kind, without a hint of harshness, enveloping everyone around her. Afterwards, we shared stories of our struggles since middle school and about being poor. But this is such a nice restaurant. Thinking about it, I did well. I want to praise myself. Yes, you deserve praise. She muttered. reaching across the table and picking up my restaurant's original paper coaster from beneath her wine glass with slender fingers. The coaster had an illustration of a three-leaf plant and the word oxalis written on it. She read the printed characters on the coaster aloud. Oxalis. Oxalis, right. It's wood sorrel, isn't it? You know your stuff. That's correct. It's a perennial herb of the genus Oxalis in the wood sorrel family. Why did you choose wood sorrel? I told her it's because a fairy tale-like story about wood sorrel that I was told as a child has stayed with me. What's the story? Just as I started to explain to her, an announcement from Susan about starting the bingo game resonated through the venue. Bingo cards were distributed, and the venue started to buzz. Susan explained the rules over the microphone. I was watching the situation for a while. Then she tapped my shoulder. Hey, tell me, what was the story? The bingo game started at the same time. Numbers were called, and voices of joy and disappointment rose from the venue. Come on, I can't wait. Well, it's noisy around, come closer, I'll tell you. I was still in the early grades of elementary school. The event at the library my mother took me to turned out to be a reading session for children. Firstly, the reader explained about wood sorrel, the subject of the book, mentioning that wood sorrel, often mistaken for clover, is a wild plant with 3 leaves. The content of the book was an anthropomorphized depiction of this wood sorrel. There were 2 wood sorrel families growing across the road from each other. The family on the left was living in a place with excellent sunlight and good drainage, leading a comfortable life. But the family across the street, they don't get sunlight, and there's no drainage, it's damp. That's right. Moreover, they get stepped on by humans every single day. Saying it hurts, and they cried. I looked at her as she joined in. She also smiled at me. Did you know this story? She nodded slightly and continued the story herself. The family on the right was mocked by the family across, saying they could only lead such a life forever. However, an anomaly occurred to the right side family, who had been stepped on by humans. The eldest son, who was always crying from being stepped on by humans, had 1 more leaf grow, from 3 to 4, turning into a 4-leaf clover. Someone's bingo card seemed to be in a row, and shouts of bingo and applause erupted. She and I silently waited for a few seconds until the venue calmed down. Afterward, at the reading session, the reader, with a self-satisfied look, closed the book and spoke about the so-called moral of the story. All the good kids here, no matter how tough times they face, even if someone steps on them, if they live without giving up, their 3 leaves can become 4, and they can be happy. Hearing that, little me thought, what is he talking about? Oh, why? Because it's the humans who are happy, thinking that having an extra leaf is fortunate, not the wood sorrel, who finds a 4-leaf variant rare or a sign of good luck. I thought it was a story possibly made up by adults. When I said so, she made a displeased face. But why then? Why does it remain in your mind to the extent of becoming the design of a diner's coaster? When I asked back, she nodded strongly. Maybe because when I transferred schools in the middle of the first term in 8th grade, I was called Pua by you and everyone else here. Every day, being mocked by classmates, I suddenly remembered this story. And I could be content, realizing that even if the only environment available to me was poverty, and no matter how much I get stepped on by people, it's okay. But Michael, you thought when you were little that happiness from having 4 leaves was just adults' made-up story, right? Yes, and that hasn't changed. But if it's not happiness, is it unhappiness? She scrunched her nose, thinking deeply. I've never thought of myself as happy, but I haven't worried about being unhappy either. If it's neither happiness nor unhappiness, then what is it? Well, it's not unhappiness, I guess. Susan, the former class representative and now the organizer, announced the end of the reunion and the plan for the after party. About 2/3 left after the main party due to various circumstances. We, still wanting to talk more, decided to join the after party. The story of the wood sorrel, which becomes a four-leaf due to harsh conditions, had slight differences in interpretation, but it was a mental support for both Mia and I during tough and painful times. Did you read that story in a book? She, too, had participated in a story reading session during her childhood. When I went, I remember, the reader, they had hair dyed in several colors. Were they wearing flashy colored leggings? Like an old lady-like dude? Yes, exactly. Someone like that. Though the venue was different, the story reading session we attended as children was by the same reader. As Mia and I were immersed in such a conversation, "Hey, point number 1 and number 2, you both look like you're not hurting." The guy who was beside Susan all along at the first party, clearly drunk, interrupted us. Immediately, Susan came to take him back. "Come on, don't get carried away. Come back here," she said, pulling him away from us. "I hear those two are getting married soon." I was slightly surprised and looked at Susan and her companion. "I had fun. I'm so happy, meeting everyone. It's been a long time. That guy, he's just let bygones be bygones. Acts like he's got it good." When I murmured so, Mia leaned in and said, "You know, Michael, what you said earlier about being neither unhappy nor happy, I think I get it, because I am no longer poor and unhappy like before, but I'm also not happy." Saying this, Mia took out a paper coaster with an illustration of a wood sorrel that she had brought from my shop. "Why does this illustrated wood sorrel have only 3 leaves? Why didn't they draw it with 4? I felt caught off guard by her question. I didn't think about it. Why didn't I draw a 4-leaf illustration? As I thought seriously, with my arms crossed, she peered at me and said, "Maybe you've never found a 4-leaf in clovers or wood sorrel." Then it hit me. No, I'm still looking for one, a 4-leaf. I raised my voice and looked at her. Then she created a radiant smile. "Me too, I'm also looking for one." She gave me a warm look. I held her hand on the table and said, "How about do it together? Shall we look for it together? Together, you and me. Yes, you and me." When I said this, instead of replying, she gripped my hand tightly. I thought to myself, even if the sun doesn't shine, no matter how muddy the path, I will walk this path further. Maybe, no, surely, together with her. I was at rock bottom after my wife left me. It was a sweet woman with dimples who rescued me when I was questioning my own purpose in life. At that time, I never imagined our relationship would turn out this way. My name's Logan. After graduating from college, I landed a job in a top-tier company. Typically, after the training period for new employees, they'd be assigned to a branch office near the headquarters, but I was assigned directly to the headquarters. The job was rigorous. Only good results were acceptable. It was demanding from the beginning. Determined not to fall behind my seniors, I strived hard and rapidly improved my skills. I graduated from a prestigious university. Always loved studying and aimed for the top. Perhaps it was sheer luck that brought me this far. However, these two qualifications seemed to naturally boost my image. I'm fairly tall, but I'd say I have a pretty average appearance. Fashion isn't exactly my strong suit. Still, thanks to my credentials, I often got approached by women. My 20s went by in a whirlwind, with both work and personal life keeping me on my toes. After working at the company for several years, I at the age of 30. Professionally, I might not have any official title yet, but I felt I was on the brink of becoming a supervisor. On the personal front, I started dating someone a friend introduced during a night out, and just last year, we tied the knot. We moved into a reasonably spacious and stylish apartment with a great view and were thoroughly enjoying our newlywed life. With my salary, we were comfortable, and considering our plans to have children, the physical toll, and future considerations, my wife chose to be a full-time housewife. Things at work were going smoothly, and every day I would return to a home where my wife was eagerly waiting. Everything seemed to be sailing smoothly, at least up to this point. Then one day, a transfer notice came in. The new location, a rural branch office, quite the contrast from the bustling city I am accustomed to. The notice did mention supervisor, so it was undeniably a promotion, but having assumed I'd stay at the headquarters, I was visibly shaken. I headed home and broke the news to my wife. But there was no joy in the promotion for me. The first thing out of her mouth was, "Why such a countryside? What's going on?" I was told by HR that they needed my skills at the new location. Even after relaying this to my wife, she seemed far from convinced. Moreover, the new place would require a move. While my wife was struggling to come to terms with it all, we didn't have much time before the move, so we started looking for a new place to live and went for some viewings. Throughout the day, as we visited multiple places, seeing the town, the buildings which looked like shabby apartments if we were in the city, her mood progressively soured. On a whim, we drove by the new branch office. The sight of its worn-out walls against the backdrop of a fading town wasn't encouraging. She was speechless, just entering this place. She couldn't accept the continuous unsettling events, and our views couldn't align. We ended the day with just the viewings. Once we got home, discussions turned into arguments. Sure, it's labeled as a promotion, but isn't this just a demotion in disguise? If you work there, you'll never get a promotion or a raise. We could be living below our means for the rest of our lives. So my wife complained in tears. Our discussions reached a deadlock, and before we knew it, moving day arrived. We decided to keep our electronic appliances in the city apartment for now. I took only my belongings and moved into the new apartment alone. For the time being, the plan was for my wife to visit during weekends to see how things played out. However, after several weeks, she still hadn't made peace with the situation, saying, "I can't live here. I can't have the life I want. And a husband working in a branch office with a dubious chance at a raise. I don't want it." After being told that by my wife, we ended up divorcing. I guess it's inevitable. Time for a fresh start and to focus on my job. That was my mindset, but the weight of the word divorce hit hard. Often at work, my hands would stop and my thoughts would spiral. I remember how homely my ex-wife was, how she always kept the house clean and had delicious meals waiting for me. Just hearing her cheerful welcome home would wash all the fatigue away. I thought I'd be fine living alone, but with the divorce, it's lonely and tough. Can't live the ideal life in the countryside. What was my worth after all? Sigh. I sighed loudly, even though I was at work. Seeing my distress, some colleagues, feeling sorry for me, invited me out for drinks. "You're much more approachable than the previous supervisor. You're doing so well for someone so young. You're sharp and precise, just like when you were at the headquarters." Even some older colleagues were present, and they all refrained from bringing up the divorce, instead encouraging and praising me. With that warmth, I was re-energized. Time has a way of healing things. After a while, I became accustomed to my new life here and dedicated myself to the responsibilities at hand. Around that time, our branch was scheduled for an occasional inspection. "Logan, long time no see. I'll be here for the week, so let's work well together." Hearing that familiar voice and turning around, I was met by Sarah, a former colleague from the headquarters. Though Sarah is younger than me, her fearless determination is well recognized, making her an adept career woman, especially in the field of inspections. She has the demanding task of traveling to branches nationwide, constantly on the move. Still, Sarah never complains and takes on her duties with unwavering stamina. I've always held her in high regard. Sarah, have you been well? I couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie. My voice grew louder with happiness. Oh, my apologies. I should address you as Miss Connor here, right? Given our current positions, Sarah now held a higher position than I did. After straightening up, I greeted her again, to which she replied with a playful chuckle, "Don't be so formal." She then nudged me with her elbow just like she used to. When Sarah laughs, adorable dimples form on her cheeks. When it comes to inspections, everyone tends to get a bit tense, but thanks to Sarah's charming demeanor, the atmosphere always settles into a comfortable state, allowing everyone to work as usual. It's quite remarkable. Then that night I decided to go out to dinner with Sarah. She was staying at a hotel nearby, and since she was planning on dining out, she asked for restaurant recommendations. Even though it was just the two of us having a meal, our conversation was mostly about work. In such a relaxed setting, we could discuss matters we wouldn't have time for at the office, making the time fly by fruitfully. As our meal and conversation neared its end, I noticed Sarah glancing at her watch. "I'm sorry, we've been here quite a while, haven't we? We should probably head out. Your wife might be getting worried," said Sarah as she began to prepare to leave. Seeing the look on my face, she tilted her head in confusion. "Well, the thing is," I then shared with her that I had gotten divorced. I went into the reasons as well, and as I spoke, Sarah listened attentively, nodding from time to time. She then casually remarked, "You know, with your capabilities, I'd expect you to be back at the main office soon." Surprised by her candid statement, I asked, "What do you mean?" Sarah responded, "It's probably a temporary placement. Once you've turned this branch around, I bet they'll want you back at headquarters." Her tone made it sound like a given. I was curious about where she had gotten such information. Sarah chuckled and said, "Don't underestimate a woman's network." I was all ears, completely absorbed in the conversation. The distance from the city hustle, the divorce, and even though my duties might have been lighter than at the headquarters, perhaps my spirits had been down without me realizing. I had perhaps underestimated myself. Seeing this, Sarah laughed and said, "Do you even realize how talented you are? Your skills are well known at the headquarters, and of course, I'm aware too." She ended on her usual cheerful note, "You better keep up the good work," and gave me a pat on the shoulder. The pain thawed, but it rekindled my spirit completely. I'll return to the main office someday. With that resolve, I worked even harder. Time flew by, and before I knew it, I was 35. "Thank you, sir," one colleague said. "I'll miss you. I hope to be just like you someday." I received a large bouquet and shook hands with everyone in my department. I worked exceptionally hard as a supervisor, leading our team to great success. I also mentored my successor, who then moved up to a managerial position. In recognition of my accomplishments, I have now returned to work at the headquarters. Even though I was returning to the same department as before, I got a promotion. I'd be joining as a department head. The bustling city atmosphere felt familiar, while the air quality was so-so. I've always loved the vibrant energy of the city. I took a few days off to handle my move and settle down before officially starting at the main office. My colleagues at the headquarters, knowing it would be hard to coordinate once I got busy, decided to throw me a welcome back party during this break. They booked the city's finest upscale restaurant for the celebration, combining 2 private rooms just behind the counter seats. Seeing all those familiar faces and sharing the joy of working together again naturally brought smiles and lively conversations. Just as I thought the day would end on a high note, something unexpected happened. When I looked towards the counter to place an additional order, a customer walking in caught my eye. Looking closer, I realized it was my ex-wife. And she wasn't alone. she was with a man. Our eyes met, and she looked as startled as I felt, freezing in place. The man noticed and asked my ex-wife, "Who's that?" Snapping back to reality, she gave a wry smile and replied with a sigh, "Oh, that's my ex-husband." The man then said, "Oh, that guy," and looked at me with a wry smile. There wasn't much left to say. She seemed to feel the same, promptly turning her back to me, and both of them took seats at the counter. I didn't let it bother me and continued chatting with my colleagues. However, on my way back from the restroom, my ex-wife called out to me. "Why are you here?" she asked with a cold tone in her voice. "I came back," I replied in the same tone. She laughed dismissively and remarked, "After being demoted, you sure had the guts to come back. You probably screwed up again, didn't you?" Giving me a pitiful look. The man sitting beside her seemed to be asking her about me. Graduating from a prestigious college and then getting demoted. Makes no sense, he sneered. Irritated by their comments, I said, "Well then, ready to leave." However, my ex-wife quickly pulled the man close to her and gloated, "He's quite impressive, isn't he?" Without me asking, she began to brag about how he works for a top-tier company, how talented he is, and how his future is so much brighter than mine. Every now and then, she'd throw in a resentful comment about me. From time to time, her bitterness towards me mixed in. As for the man, while he said, "Don't talk like that, it's sad for your ex-husband," he didn't seem entirely displeased with her praises. He chuckled condescendingly at me with every nod he gave. I tried to tune them out, looking for the right moment to head back to my seat. Just then, a colleague heading to the restroom stopped in his tracks. "Hey, isn't that you, Jake?" My colleague recognized the man and addressed him. "Oh, it's a pleasure. Quite the coincidence," Jake responded. It seems they know each other. They started chatting lightly, but the man kept stealing glances at me. "Wait, do you work with this guy?" Pointing at me, he asked my colleague. I wonder if they seemed close. My colleague looked surprised that the man didn't recognize me. "Hey, you can't talk to him like that. He's our new department head, and so young and impressive. You should greet him properly. I mean, seriously, this man, this Mr. Stern, is something else. He's the youngest ever in our company's history to be promoted to this position." My colleague gleefully shared this, briefing me on the details about this Jake guy before taking off. Turns out, this man is a sales rep from a major supplier who frequents our department. After hearing about me from my colleague, the man whispered, "Is Logan the one I've heard rumors about?" His face progressively paled. My ex-wife seemed momentarily stunned but soon snapped, "Wait a minute. You mean he's higher up than you?" and confronted the man with a frustrated look. Still pale-faced, the man muttered something about needing to greet me properly but was taken aback by my ex-wife's rebuke. There's no point in sticking around to watch their spat. I locked eyes with the man, saying, "So you're Jake, right? I'll remember that," with a pleasant smile, then made my way back to my seat. Yet, I could still hear voices from behind. Glancing towards the bar seats, my ex-wife and the man seemed to be having an ongoing dispute. When our eyes met, Jake quickly looked away, urging my ex-wife, "Let's leave now," and quickly settled the bill. With a face portraying sheer frustration, my ex-wife gave me one last glance, then slammed the door on her way out. Soon after, I returned to my dream position at the company's headquarters. From day one, with a hectic schedule, I felt that old buzz, making me even more passionate about my job. Some time later, I bumped into Jake at work. He immediately approached me, deeply bowing, apologizing for his rudeness that day. I told him I didn't mind at all anymore, but given his sincere regret, I offered, "Want to grab some coffee?" After a couple of sips, he let out a long sigh, finally appearing relaxed. We made small talk about work, but the conversation naturally shifted to my ex-wife. Apparently, they had a falling out. Whether it was her pride or something else, she ended up breaking things off with Jake. I couldn't help but be slightly baffled. Was she so set on snagging a well-educated, high-earning man? I feel sorry for my ex-wife, too, even though she is beautiful to look at, cheerful and friendly, and has many good qualities. Though Jake came off as a jerk that day, I've heard from others that he's genuinely talented. I cheered him on, telling him to keep his head high. After work, as I stepped out of the office, my phone rang. The screen read, "Sarah." Before I could finish saying hello on the phone, Sarah eagerly started talking. "Hey, it's me. I'm coming back this Sunday." Her voice was as bubbly as ever. Since that inspection, Sarah and I had kept in touch. At first, our conversations were mostly about work. Sarah would often give me a piece of her mind, always offering emotional support. I think the reason I never gave up and aimed higher was probably because of her presence. "I know you better than anyone else. Have some confidence and just do it." That's how she sounds on the phone. Even though she's supposed to be younger than me, it makes me laugh, wondering who's really the older one. Then on Sunday, I waited for Sarah at the JFK airport lobby. When Sarah saw me, her face lit up with a broad smile, and she hurried over. "I'm back," she said cheerfully, and Sarah hugged me. Being embraced in such a public place, I was taken aback and embarrassingly stuttered, "Welcome back." I tentatively put my arm around Sarah's back, not sure how to react in the situation. Then Sarah looked up at me with an expectant expression and said, "Don't you have something else to say?" I could feel everyone's eyes on us. It was hard to admit, but I looked at her and said, "I love you, Sarah." But she teased, "Is that all? Isn't there more?" making a mischievous face, urging me to say more. I felt like my face was on fire. But I knew I had to say it now, so I gathered my courage and proposed to Sarah right there. As Sarah and I communicated frequently, we became closer. We both knew our feelings for each other were growing, but with I feel sorry for his ex-wife, too, even though she is beautiful to look at, cheerful and friendly, and has many good qualities. Sarah traveling to various branches nationwide and having long overseas business trips, we hardly got a chance to meet. During this time, I once confessed my feelings over the phone, but she told me she wanted to hear it in person. And in time, we officially got married and became husband and wife. "Hey, look, I found this adorable mug and just had to buy it." Sarah seemed to have sneakily hidden it among the moving boxes, intending to use it from today. She happily lays the two out side by side and smiles. The new apartment we got for our life together with Sarah. From our high-rise view, I feel even more motivated. She wanted to settle down and had expressed her wish to retire early from her job, but they didn't want to let go of such a valuable employee. After taking a short break, she decided to work part-time at the headquarters. As for me, my role as a department head keeps me extremely busy. It helps that Sarah understands my job. She's good at supporting me and has been a tremendous help. "Come on, put your back into it and have a great day." Every day, Sarah playfully smacks my back as I head out. I think she treats me a little rough, but when she does this, the day goes strangely well. "I'll be off now. Take care, Sarah," I tell her, and as I leave, I can't help but notice how her dimples make her smile even more endearing today. I have to keep working hard to ensure that smile never fades. I can't always rely on her support. This new chapter of our life is bound to be busy, but I remind myself never to take my wife for granted.